Welcome to the Bridge to Tomorrow's Talent, the podcast where we explore real world challenges and inspiring solutions behind preparing the next generation for success in the real world of work. I'm your host, Dale Marsden, founder and chief visionary of Tomorrow's Talent. We help forward thinking leaders build powerful pathways for emerging talent, closing the gap between education, real world skills, and career opportunity. On the show, I sit down with leaders across business, education, and workforce development to uncover what it truly takes to close the growing gap between emerging talent and opportunity. Today on our show, I have Eric Schmidt. Eric is the president and co-founder of Exquadrum, a rocket company. He'll tell us more about that, but so grateful, Eric, that you could take some time to join today. I was thinking about as I was preparing for our time. And I want this just to be a dialogue between friends because I think we are friends. We've known each other for a long time. I was
Yes, in fact,
thinking about one of the deeper engagements we had when I was superintendent back in Victor Elementary School District in Victorville back in, I think, 2012 or so.
at least, yeah.
We kicked off an event called STEAM 2020. We said by 2020, we wanted all kids to graduate high school concurrently with a 2-year, 4-year trade or technical degree in a STEAM related field. And you were one of the biggest advocates for that. And so, yeah, maybe just tell us a little bit about that and how it got us kicked off and some of your recollections that connected our work. Because I know we brought people out to your shop. You were in a different place at the time. Tell us
Yeah,
about
that's right.
what you're doing and all that.
Well, let's just establish some protocol here. Can I just go with Dale instead of Dr.
Of
Marsden?
course. Oh, yeah, please.
Well, I say that to say because, when I first met you, it was definitely Dr. Marsden and your capacity as a superintendent and chief visionary. Ironically, I think chief visionary is a title you've had your entire career. At least I associate who you are just at your DNA level as a chief visionary. So I think it's very fitting that you've adopted that formally in this capacity here, Tomorrow's Talents. Back when we first were talking about these opportunities to integrate science and technology and math, and just as importantly, the arts, that was the genesis of the STEAM 2020. I think in its infancy, it was just about how do we take education and mold it to be relevant in today's society. And in the aerospace community, especially if you contract with the government, there's two things the government wants to see. They want to see relevancy and they want to see recency. What have you done lately? And what are you doing that helps me in the objective or the object or the requirement that I'm trying to solve? And so I think the STEAM 2020 work that we worked on together, it was relevant and it was recent. At the time, it was, what do we know today and how can we apply it for tomorrow? Which is very fitting for tomorrow's talent, obviously. But what was really important and what attracted to me in that process and what still attracts me today to education at all levels, all the way up to the collegiate level, is that educators today are more likely to look at the curriculum and ask themselves, are we teaching the right things to prepare these students for where they need to go?
Mm-hmm.
And if you're an educator, that's a scary question. Yeah. Because 5 years from now, it's going to be different than what we anticipated. Yeah. And so as an educator, how do you bridge the gap to understand how the relevancy of what you're teaching is going to be recent? Is it going to be applicable for the future? And so I think that the work that you and your staff were doing way back then really attracted me because you guys were like, how do we figure that out? And I believe the way you figure it out is you go out and you bridge communication and understanding gaps with the people who are buying your products. In other words, the students that you're graduating, the students that you're preparing for the future. And that was the first time that I saw it being applied in a manner that was seeking the understanding of the future to the best of the ability for us to understand it, and saying, how do we connect our curriculum so that we're relevant in the future, when our students graduate and are working for you. And so I've always given you credit, and to be very frank with you, the many of the school districts here in the Mojave River Valley have really taken that to heart. How do they mold curriculum to be relevant?
That's right. That's great. Yeah, and the gap you talk about, I a few years back I had Gallup come and present some studies that they'd done on not just engagement of students, but that gap between the real world and our education system. And they shared some data that they had surveyed, all the chief academic officers. Hey, well, how well, people like me, former superintendent, how well are you doing at preparing kids for the real world of work? And 96% of us, we think we're doing a good job. And then they surveyed people like you, business leaders, and it was 11%. I mean, that's a pretty big gap. And you talk about the realities of relevance, and how what the students are learning today needs to be relevant to the real world. I mean, it's a tall order for educators, and you've played a long time in this space trying to bridge that divide and that gap, that understanding and knowledge gap that you said it right on, communication gap. How do we authentically prepare students for the real world? I remember walking through your shop way back when, and you said, Dale, I wish instead of these kids going off to college and getting these crazy degrees in engineering, they'd start with us first, community college under their belt, get started with us first, and then once they then move on. Talk a little bit about that, because a lot of our families, I think, they think that the end of education is you go to college, and then there's this thought that all kids should go to college, and then there's other camps where it's college to career or career to college. And I kind of land in that space that some kids are going from college to their career, depending on what they're doing. Doctors and lawyers, et cetera, you got to go to college to get these certifications. Right. And then some are going to start in a career and then take measured steps to talk to me about your view on that, Eric.
Well, it's as a person with a baccalaureate degree, it's easy to say, this degree has been the pinnacle, or what really got me started in my career as a rocket engineer. And to be frank, it did. So I'm not going to discount that. Yeah. But one of the things that I've discovered over the years, having run Exquadrum for 23 years now, is not all humans are the same.
Yeah.
And so how do you fashion an education system that tailors to the infinite possibilities of human DNA? And you basically can't. So it really is incumbent upon kind of the other elements of education and society, industry, heck, even faith-based organizations to basically engage these students and help them recognize what their strengths are. So one of the things that I'm very passionate about is talking to high school students and helping them recognize that, number one, not all students should go to college and not all students have to go to college. It's okay if you have skills that allow you to think with your hands, mm-hmm. and combine the power of your brain with, your fingertips. Yeah. And that's a significant gift that some people are given. Not all, some people are given those. The almost 180 degrees on the spectrum are the folks that I meet at times that are so gifted mentally, their mental faculties, their brains, their geniuses, are off the charts, but they can't use a screwdriver.
Yeah.
Okay, so what value is that? Well, it has value depending on the work that you're doing. So engineers make things. Scientists think of things. That's what I like to say to young students in high school, to just differentiate those, because there's a common misnomer, rocket scientist.
Yeah.
It's a term that came out of the 50s and the 60s, but I'm a rocket engineer. I'm an engineer. I make things. So when you look at the spectrum of what's required to make things, you need to be able to design them, which is a very heavy mental process, and all the way down to actually build it and test it, which is a process of the hands. And so it really does require a spectrum of capabilities, and we should never discount that all of those elements are required to get to some end objective. For us, it's making a rocket. You can see one right behind me. But, sometimes it's making a bridge, sometimes it's making a building. There are plenty of examples in the real world of folks who have been incredibly successful without college degrees. So look at Peter Beck, the genius and behind Rocket Lab. He didn't have a college degree, but arguably his ability to understand the fundamentals of how to make things and how things work, the physics of the real world, allowed him to be tremendously successful. Yeah. So it really has been something that I've tried to communicate as clearly as possible. Don't be fooled that college is the only career path that can provide success in life.
Yeah.
And we have to communicate that. And unfortunately, Dale, the method by which to identify those who are better at one thing than another is not perfect, but we certainly don't want some kind of a Soviet process where
Yeah.
everyone takes standardized tests and you become a machinist and you become an engineer. We don't want that. We want to blend those things seamlessly. So you're bringing the gifts, the passions, and the abilities of all of those people together to make beautiful, wondrous things that we call engineered, devices.
Yeah. Yeah, and one of the things we landed on relative to that is use science created by the inventors of WebMD. We use that assessment. It looks at students' interests, their talents, and their aptitudes, and where those three things intersect. So it helps open to them some possibilities, especially in traditionally marginalized communities. A lot of times, students don't know what they don't know. They don't know what's available to them, and so it kind of opens that door. And relative to that, you made a comment earlier that you've spent time talking to folks at all levels of education, K-12, community college level. I know you're a big believer in Cal Poly and what they do. And talk a little bit about
Cal Poly Pomona,
bonus.
although
Yep.
the other two Cal Polys in the system are fantastic universities.
Yeah, so maybe talk about some of the messages you have for people at each level, and what are you telling people they need to prepare for as they enter into their real world of work, and what skills are you looking for? What skills, what certifications, credentialing or degrees? I mean, talk about that from your field and your view and some of these conversations you've had.
Sure. Um, by definition, uh, the majority of the work we do is engineering based. An engineering degree does have value. It's significant. Some have more value than others. Hence my appreciation for Cal Poly Pomona and full disclosure, my alma mater. But it really is important. And frankly, it's incumbent upon us. And when I say us, I'm talking parents and educators, counselors, to be able to match the aptitudes and the capabilities and the passions of students to the work that they can accomplish. You talk about marginalized communities, here in the Mojave River Valley, a classic marginalized community, when you look at, classic statistics, all the way from, what percentage of free lunch programs to median income in the region. And, as I looked at that, one of the things that became very clear to me was when your parents effectively are in survival mode,
Hmm.
um, just trying to put a roof over, their kids' heads, their own heads, trying to feed them, trying to have reliable transportation, and all of the things that really, from a Laszlo's perspective, are fundamental to just safety, and things like comfort come second. When you're in these communities, the parents oftentimes are not aware of opportunities. They're not connecting dots between the aptitudes of their children and the possibilities of what they can do in their lives. So communicating possibilities, communicating potential, communicating to real people about what they can accomplish in life in this region is really important, because those discussions aren't happening traditionally in the homes at the dinner table. And so that's been a big eye opener for me. It didn't happen at my own dinner table because my parents, in a lot of cases, were in survival mode as well. Neither one of my parents had graduated from high school. So the idea of a college degree was not foreign, but it seemed far reaching. And what's been fascinating for me as I go to Cal Poly Pomona primarily, I spend a lot of time on campuses, but in Southern California in general, you are talking to students. The percentage of first generation students in 2025 who are going to college in their family is staggering. The numbers are staggering. What does that mean? That means that at some point, that student there's some essence, some element of communication has occurred to that student that says college is a possibility. And there's something out there called fill in the blank. electrical engineering, biology, genetic engineering, aerospace engineering, material science, fill in the blank, that they got their heads wrapped around. And, if it's a state school, by November the 30th, they got their admissions requirements in, and they got to this college. But it's so surprising to me as I talk to these students and I lecture on campus, how often they feel alone.
Mhm. Mhm.
They feel alone. Actually don't, they know they're where they're supposed to be, but they don't exactly know why in some instances, or they don't know what that is, what's the logical conclusion of where they're going. And so I think that what we find here is that, they're being motivated into this area, and they're getting into school, and they're doing interesting things, and they have been touched in such a way that they have found that path. But that path exists for the non-collegiate student as well. How do we engage pathways and vocational systems that allow those students who can be upskilled through community college systems or specialized vocational training systems, so that we're filling out the spectrum of vocations that are required to run society. And so communicating that and trying to ensure that our education system is basically providing all those opportunities, that's a difficult task. I mean, you know that firsthand.
Yep.
So for me, I'm often engaged at the engineering or science side of this. So I'm over on one side of the spectrum, but because my company hires people who are also doing some of the most important work, which is making the parts and testing the parts, putting them together. I'm also involved in that piece of it. So, I see both sides of it, and we try to support both sides. We've sponsored the High Desert. Oh gosh, I just forgot the name of it. High Desert Training. Gosh, I can't. Training Center, High Desert Training Center. Gosh, excuse me, please forgive me.
No, it's okay.
Frank Castanos is gonna beat me because of the importance of that piece. And then we engage at the collegiate level because of the importance of the engineering piece. And so the whole spectrum has to be served.
Yeah, yeah. And I want to talk about that spectrum that needs to be served a little bit more in the gap that we talked about. But before I do, I want to ask you a question, personal question. How you mentioned earlier you're first generation, you're son of immigrants from Argentina, and how did you get to go? And what I mean by that is how did you get your start? You went to college, you did a lot of things that prepared you for what you're doing now, but how'd you get there to the starting point? Tell me a little bit about that. Tell our
Well, I'll make it short. But as has often said at various times, there's always a woman involved. Okay, and I say that in a romantic way.
yeah.
My current wife, Cindy Schmidt, who's an educator in the Asperius Unified School District, she and I were dating in high school, and we were very serious. And it was obvious to me that we were going to get married. And so, I just kind of looked around and said, if I'm going to be a husband and a father, I'm going to need to know how to do something in my life to be able to support, this family that I'm going to want to love and rear. And so, as the story goes, I went down to the library, and when I talk to students at the high school area, typically I talk about this. I went to this place called the library. And they have these things. It's wood pulp that's compressed into a surface that's called paper. And then they're bound together in these things called books. So I'm a bit facetious in that regard. But I found this book that basically had salaries of occupations. And I basically just went to the top of the table and said, what what occupation makes the most money?
Yeah, great.
And, it was genetic engineering, and for various reasons, that wasn't going to fit me. Aerospace was right under it. And this was from the 80s. So, this was before, the aerospace bubble kind of burst. And I basically said, oh, I'm going to be an aerospace engineer because it made the most money in the region that I wanted to live. And I applied to two colleges, Cal Poly Pomona and Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. I got into both, and for various reasons, it makes sense for me to go to Cal Poly Pomona, and kind of the rest is history. But my parents, who were amazing people and did a fantastic job providing for me and my brother and sister and doing everything that I think parents should do from a work ethic standpoint, from an integrity standpoint, and from a moral compass standpoint, they did a fantastic job. But they didn't know the first thing about college. In fact, my dad basically said, I'm not going to pay for it.
Yeah.
So it was really incumbent upon me. But I will never end this story without recognizing the impact of my physics teacher, my
Mhm.
calculus teacher, my anatomy and physiology teacher, my chemistry teacher. All of these educators were impactful because they were communicating a vision that wasn't being communicated at my home.
Yeah. Yeah.
They were the ones,
Mhm.
along with with the need that I knew I had to make money so that I could provide for a
Yeah.
family that I knew was
Right.
gonna was
Motivate.
they were the ones that helped me understand how to connect some dots.
Yeah.
And I'm forever grateful to them. And that's why I think educators are just so important. It's not just about learning how to, how to do a Taylor expansion. It's also important on how to guide and how to help people know what possibilities are there in their lives.
That's great. That's a great
That's the story.
No, it's a great story. And I think it underscores the beauty of public ed in America, right? I mean, our aim is that, every kid, no matter, their capacity, their income status, the color of their skin, the language they speak, the country they come from, they're entitled to a free and appropriate public education, right? We
Right.
educate every child, which I think is a gift in America.
It
Many
is.
countries across the world do not have such a gift. And it is
I
the
think it's a gift that's taken for granted, by the
It
way.
is right, agreed, and I think it's often minimized, right? And you're right. There's a lot we have to do to reorganize the system so that there's experience built into this education process across the way. And I think we have to give credit where credit is due. That those that enter public education as a career space, my experience has been by and large, they're people that love kids and want kids to be successful at
Yeah.
all levels. And one of the things that's really challenged me in the recent years, I've had 30 years in public ed, and I think I shared this with a previous guest, but some recent data came to light that, we spend all this time and effort getting kids ready for the holy grail of public ed, which is college. So, they go through the K-12 system, they graduate, they're successful, maybe I got their eye on a plan. Uh, they go off to college, and the data says 53% of kids with a bachelor's degree are under unemployed. And then recently, some new
Mhm.
study came out from Burning Glass Institute and Strata Education, that 2024 report, where they said, yeah, and they remain that way, under and unemployed, for up to 10 years.
Yeah.
And so they then went on to say the distinguisher was that students who had just one internship through their college experience, it could be 6 to 8 weeks, were 50% more likely to end up in a college level paying job out of college. And so that's a big deal. And you've been the kind of employer and person that's just really believed in this talent pipeline ecosystem development, getting students in early and often, K6 kids, K12 kids, college kids at all levels, really getting them to touch and feel and experience. I mean, I'll never forget walking through your shop with you and videotaping, so we could show other people what it looks like. What would be your message to other employers about this talent pipeline development work and taking an active role in that? We've got a huge disconnect. Our system's not perfect. We've got a long ways to grow. But you've been doing a lot. You've taken an active role in this, and you run a company while you're doing it. So talk about that. What's your message to other employers out there that are in this space?
It's a bit ironic because today is the day where all of our interns, that's their last day for the summer, they go back to school. So I raced back to my office to do this podcast. And I'm in the truck with two of the interns who did some fantastic stuff this summer. And the conversation was unhinged passion. These two students were like, they were unbridled in their ability to regulate the work that they were doing this summer. They kept connecting it back to this is anchoring concepts that they've learned, or this is informing them about decisions they're making about in their own education, class selection, the kinds of jobs that interest them. There are all of these kind of minor refinements in their lives that didn't exist 8 weeks ago, 10 weeks ago. And it's what it is for those two individuals. What is it doing? It's basically helping them make decisions that are gonna number one, bring prosperity to their lives because they have experience and education and they're making better decisions based on that. Number two, all of us need our passions reignited from time to time. When you're in the middle of college, sometimes the drudgery overcomes you. And so being able to get away from the whiteboards and get into the white hat space where you can think creatively and you can do interesting things that helps your mind kick into a different gear. And as an employer, it gives me the unique ability to say, oh, this person is so skilled in this space. Let's maintain a relationship with the student as they're finishing school and then attract them back to our business. So are there selfish, capitalistic motives behind what we do? Absolutely. But that's okay, because at the end, it provides value. So what I would tell other employers is lean in. Does it take time? Is there some level of reduced efficiency when engineer or interns start in your organizations because they have to job shadow, they have to learn new systems, they have to learn the language of your industry and your company, they have to understand the culture, and 10 to 12 weeks is not a lot of time. But if your process is engaging and it's inviting so that those interns can make independent progress quickly, I guarantee you that the value is so significant that it's hard to put a number on it. And let me tell you why that is. Oftentimes employers look at it from a pure economic standpoint. Hey, we're going to pay an engineering intern $28 an hour, and we would have maybe paid an engineer $36 an hour. And so there's an arbitrage there that they're saving money. That's the wrong way to look at it, Dale. Those students go back to college and they talk about, man, you would not believe what I did at Exquadrum this summer. And then those 5 students are going like, well, who's Exquadrum? It's this company and they do this and they do that and they do this. They're recruiting. They're bringing light to the things that the culture that we're trying to send out to the masses so that we can hire exactly the right people to make our company bit better. And that interaction, the soft skill associated with that interaction and how it propagates through the system it's intangible. You cannot put a number on that. And let's just say that those students, those interns go off and they get hired in my case by a Lockheed Martin or a Northrop Grumman or an Aerojet Rocketdyne L3 Harris. That's okay because all those companies are in essence doing the same thing. They're working to provide for the defense of this great nation. So if anything, the work that we've done here at Exquadrum, the work that any company does in educating and teaching and bringing passion to these students, it's just going to bring value to our country as a whole. And so you have to look at it much more holistically. You have to look at it almost altruistically to be able to say there's much more value than just the arbitrage of the difference from someone's, pay rate. So, I really do try to look at it in that capacity. The impact that my company, my small little company in Victorville, California, has made to literally hundreds, perhaps thousands of students over the years, you cannot put a number on it. It's so valuable. So, we need to be doing it for many reasons. Monetary considerations are one, but the much bigger picture needs to be considered as well.
That's great. And to our guests, we're interviewing here Eric Schmidt, President, Co-Founder of Exquadrum, and he has shared some nuggets of wisdom that I really just want to highlight as we bring our conversation to a close. And these are some things that he just said. Making sure that our interns come out of this, what they're doing is it's unhinged passion in action. He's hearing these things from the students who've gone through these internships with him as an employer, anchoring concepts, informing their class and job selections. I mean, think about that. You're on college and you're kind of thinking about what you might want to do, but you go to an internship and now you're really clear, getting clear on what you need to do in class to prepare for that, getting clear on exactly what it is, the distinctive job you want to do, and then those minor reinforcements in their lives, all for the end aim of them achieving the objective they set out to, which is this passionate employment, this unhinged passion and action, and building into prosperity and really reigniting these types of things. And so the message to employers is, yeah, there's some selfish capitalism in here, but lean into it. This is a way to grow your own company and spend the kind of time investing in the next generation of talent. That's what tomorrow's talent is all about. So that employers can do, as Eric just said, hire exactly the right people to make your company better. And how better are you going to get that talent than if you're focused, as Eric is, on talent pipeline development? At Tomorrow's Talent, we're building pathways that close the gap between education, real world skills, and meaningful careers. And Eric, we're just glad you're here to help us do it. I want to thank you for your time today. It's been a real pleasure. It's always a pleasure to talk to you, and I look forward to getting together with you again soon sometime.
Dale, the pleasure is always mine. I really applaud what you and Ginger and your team are doing. Tomorrow's Talent has found a bridge that needs to be built, and you guys are building it. And so I really applaud the work you guys are doing.
Eric, thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure. Enjoy.